Welcome back, YouTube. This is Evil Squeegee. This is DMPC, the show where I am both the DM and the PC, and we are playing Chronicles of Darkness today. We finished our new campaign. We finished our old campaign of Dungeon World last week, and this week we are playing Chronicles of Darkness and starting a horror campaign, running Mythic. Darknicles of Chronic, says Horrendous. We are running a horror campaign using the horror theme from Mythic. So here's how this works. We've got our character sheet. I've already built the character. We're going to dive right into the play here after I get us started. But we are using the horror track, which means that every time I find a protection or leverage, we bump ourselves some progress, and the game will be inserting shivers where I encounter the horror of the story. And then in addition to that, I will also be running the emotional quest rules for Mythic, which will help force our character to deal with their pyrophobia and their claustrophobia as a mountain that they must overcome, hopefully giving us a little bit more character arc into our story. This is going to be new to me. I'm not used to playing with so many extra doodads. We're also running peril points. Peril points, I have 2 of them per adventure. I can spend a peril point to force the narrative to save my character's life, because this is a horror game and dying is going to be likely. And I think that's just about it. Let's get this party started. Let's go through some very basic stuff. Our character backstory. My dad was a firefighter in his youth and rescued my mom from a fire. My mom and dad fell in love after that and got married and had me. As a little kid, I was trapped in a burning building and I was rescued by firefighters just like my mom was. And I developed severe pyrophobia and severe claustrophobia as a result, which interfered with my dreams of becoming a firefighter, disappointing my father and giving the very baseline of the relationship with my dad is I didn't follow in the family footsteps that he really wanted me to follow in. My mother disappeared under mysterious circumstances, and the night that she vanished, I saw the eyeless smile, which is a supernatural figure or entity or monster. I don't know, because my character forgot having seen this eyeless smile, because supernatural in the world of darkness is very in the Chronicles of Darkness is very difficult for the human brain to process, and so I snapped and forgot. My father, after my mother went missing, is so depressed that he fails as a father to make me a firefighter, and then he also failed as a husband to protect his wife. So my father and I have fallen out, and we don't really talk much. Depression has done some damage to that relationship. And then I decided to attend college instead of going into the family business. And I have dreams of joining the track team. The next important point for character creation in the World of Darkness, we'll go over my stats and my character sheet in a minute, is breaking points. There are 5 questions that you have to answer when you're making a Chronicles of Darkness character. They are: what is the worst thing you've ever done? What is the worst thing you can imagine yourself doing? What is the worst thing your character can imagine someone else doing? What is your character forgotten? And what is the most traumatic thing that has ever happened to your character? So in order, what is the worst thing you've ever done? Raymond is not exactly a bad boy. Raymond is not a troublemaker. The most trouble Raymond ever got into was that he stole money from his mother's purse and lied to cover it up. What is the worst thing they can imagine themselves doing? Raymond can imagine himself holding up like a corner store at gunpoint if he had to in order to survive. What is the worst thing your character can imagine someone else doing? Torture. is probably the worst he can imagine someone else doing. He can't wrap his head around murder. He can't wrap his head around any of the terrible things that go on in the world. And the worst thing he can imagine somebody doing is somebody needing information really badly and torturing to get it. What has your character forgotten? The eyeless smile, a creature, character, person, or thing that was there the night his mother disappeared. And what is the most traumatic thing that has ever happened to your character? They were trapped in a burning building and they got rescued by firemen. The character sheet, which I can't put on screen. Name, Raymond O'Neill. Age, 22. Player, evil squeegee. Virtue, generous. O'Neill is a very charitable type. He wants to help other people. His vice is cowardice, which is going to serve him very well in the world of darkness. As he slowly loses his sanity confronting the nature of the world. He's a college student. His most notable stats, he doesn't have any real notable stats. He's got no attributes over 3. He's got resolve 3, composure 3, manipulation 3, and everything else is at 2. He has athletics 3 with a specialty in running, stealth 2 with a specialty in hiding, and academics 2 with a specialty in research. The other things, he has the trained observer merit, which I am going to forget, but it gives him 9 again on his perception checks, which is going to be bad, because you don't want to notice the craziness, the hauntings, and the evil in the world. I'm feeling very Call of Cthulhu lately, because I played a little Call of Cthulhu recently. He has 2 points of resources. His family does have money. They are not poor. He's not your typical broke college student. And then there's also the question of his telekinesis. He does not know where his telekinesis came from. It manifested when he hit puberty. He has this power. He's kept it a secret his whole life, and he has no idea where it came from. And discovering the source of his telekinesis is part of what he wants to accomplish. His aspirations are to discover what happened to his mother, to earn a position on the track team, and discover the source of his telekinesis. So that's what he's going to be doing when the campaign starts up is those 3 things. We are running Core Chronicles of Darkness 2nd edition and Mythic GM Emulator 2nd edition as our mechanics here. And I think that just about runs through all of the basics. So let's get this party started and find out. We're gonna kick off the campaign with a random event, and we need to know where everything is starting off. We're using a special horror event focus table, instead of the standard one. This is the one that I've pulled from Mythic Magazine. If you're following along at home, Mythic Magazine issue 19, I think it is, has the special rules for the horror theme. So we're gonna start off with a random event. 87 to 94 is a PC negative. Oh no. That's just the perfect way to start off a campaign. What is the PC negative that we encounter? A 94 and a 50 on action. A 94 is going to be travel, and a 50 is going to be investment. Travel, investment. So, our character Raymond has packed everything he owns into a car and is leaving home and is is driving his way over to the college campus. And he is driving from point A to point B in his old beat up car when he is currently moving through some backwoods, some back roads, and his engine cuts out, and there's nothing but trees on either side of the road. His engine cuts out, his radio starts going wild, and that is how we're going to start this horror story. And so he's going to climb out of his car, and he's going to pop the hood, and he's going to find out what's making all this steam coming out of the front of his car, because that's the only thing he can do. He kind of curses to himself. He looks at the radio like a little funky, because it's going a little wild. And what does he do? Let's consult my character sheet, Raymond. Do you have any points in crafts? You do not. So intelligence crafts -3, unskilled, that's a chance die. He's just gonna have to sit here and wait, I think, for somebody to come along. He's gonna try. He's gonna try to fix his car. So a chance die is what happens when, in Chronicles of Darkness, you always roll an attribute plus a skill. For those of you who've played a lot of World of Darkness, this isn't any news to you. But if you're following along and you've never really played Chronicles of Darkness before, you roll an attribute plus a skill. In my case, it's going to be Intelligence 2 plus Crafts 0. And because Crafts is a mental skill, it gets -3 to that penalty. And I have 2 dice, so that reduces me to 0 dice. That means that I'm rolling a chance die. A chance die will generate a success on a 1, on a success on a 10, and it'll create a critical failure on a 1. Chance dice do not explode. So let's find out what happens. A 5, a failure. So Raymond has climbed out of his car and has popped open the hood and propped open the hood on that stick that you keep inside. So he's popped open his hood and he's got it. I don't know what that stick is called, but you know what I'm talking about. Like, he pulls up the stick and he props the hood up and he kind of leans in over his engine and scratches his head and mutters to himself that he should have paid more attention when his father was explaining how to fix a car. And he just has no idea what to do. He's in the middle of nowhere. He's got his car here. So does somebody come along in a reasonable amount of time? Let's consult the Mythic GM emulator. I'm going to call this a 50-50. It is Chaos Rank 5. 21, yes, someone comes along. So who is it that comes along? Let's consult with more Mythic GM emulator things. Character descriptions, character background, character identity. Let's find out by rolling D100. 44 and 49. 44 is a hunter and 49 is an investigator. So a hunter investigator. I'm probably gonna say this character is out in these backwoods specifically because he's here to go hunting, and he's an investigator. So in his spare time, he's a PI. Let's find out. 1 to 2, they are male. 2 to 3 or 3 to 4, non-binary. 5 to 6. I keep doing that. 5 to 6, they are going to be a woman. 3 to 4, they are a non-binary investigator and hunter. We need a name for this character. Casey Britt. So we're gonna add Casey Britt to our character lists here. Actually, no, we're gonna do that during the bookkeeping phase. I'm gonna try and keep myself on track using Mythic the way it is written. So Casey Britt is driving, I imagine, not a beat up hunk of junk, but not like the world's fanciest car either, because being a PI just doesn't pay much. And Casey Britt is coming back from having hunted and is headed into the town that the college exists in. And so they've got a deer is strapped to the top of their car. And they pull over and they stop and climb out of their car and walk over and kind of make that small talk like, oh, engine trouble, huh? And Raymond just kind of like rubs his face and says, yes. I have no idea what to do. And Casey says, well, I can help. Let me take a look. And we're going to say that Casey has 1 crafts and 2 intelligence, making them an average person who's worked on cars before. So Casey is going to roll 3d10. And going to get no successes. Casey kind of scratches their head and says, you know, there's nothing wrong with your engine. It should be running just fine. And Raymond sits back and says, that's funny because the engine's not running. Watch. And he climbs into the car and he cranks the engine in it, and it just doesn't start. And the radio kicks up again, and Casey stops and looks at the radio, and the radio just keeps making these weird, like, noise, like it's trying to tune into something, but Casey didn't touch the radio. I mean, Raymond didn't touch the radio. Neither did Casey. Nobody's touched the radio. Raymond will kind of, like, slump and look at his car full of all of his stuff. He doesn't want to leave his car here. He doesn't want to do anything like that. So he stops and he asks Casey. He says, Casey, what's the nearest gas station mechanic? Like, what's the deal? How far am I going to have to walk here? And Casey says, oh, you're not going to have to walk. I'll drive you. It's a couple miles up the road. There's a gas station. We'll be able to get some help there. And so Raymond says, all right. And reluctantly climbs into Casey's car. And does Casey's car start, or is Casey's car also shut down? Let's find out. Does Casey's car start 50-50? 80. Casey's car will not start. And so Casey climbs into his car, climbs into their car, and pulls the engine, and that's my impression of an engine, in case you didn't notice. But the engine just won't start. It turns and turns and turns and turns and turns, but it won't start. And then Casey's radio starts. And so Casey kind of stops and pops the hood to their car and goes over the engine and scratches their head again, because there's no reason for this car to not start, but it just won't start. It seems like we've driven into some kind of dead area where mechanics and radios just don't work. So I am going to ask... This is supposed to be a horror story, so I am going to ask Mythic if something creepy is watching them from the woods, or if something is nearby, or what have you. Call it 50-50. A 12, I do not think a 12 is an extreme yes, but we'll double check. 50-50, no, a 10 would have been an extreme yes. So there is something in the woods is lurking and watching. And we have our trained observer merit, which gives us 9 again, and I'm going to roll for Raymond's wits 2 plus composure 3 is 5 dice. Roll 5d10. The goal is to get an 8, a 9, or a 10 on each individual die to count as a success. 10s explode, and because Raymond has the 9 again quality on this roll as a result of his trained observer merit, Raymond's 9s also explode. He did not roll any 9s, but he did roll a success, and so something catches his eye out of the, like, something moving in the woods, and he stops, he turns, and he says, hello? And Casey says, what? And Raymond says, no, not you. I think there was something in the woods. And Casey stops and pulls out his gun, his hunting rifle. There's no houses for miles out here, Casey says. And Raymond nods and says, we should probably start walking to that mechanic that you said was down the road. And Casey nods. He says, we got 2 cars here, and I got nothing. And that is where we are going to close the first scene. Okay, so we have new threads of fix the car. At the end of each scene, we enter the bookkeeping phase. And that means that we go over our threads list and our character list. So we have fix the car, and we have Casey, the PI / Hunter, as our characters that we've added. And I'm going to say that things have been out of our characters' control, so the chaos factor is going to bump up to 6 from 5. Our next scene begins with us, the scene setup. The scene setup is that we are walking from our cars to this gas station / mechanic with something following us and something in the woods watching us. What we do now is we roll 1d10 to scene test. Is there an interrupt scene, or is the scene altered as we reach the gas station? If this rolls evens, then it is an interrupt scene and something happens before we reach the gas station. If it rolls odds, then it is something that is changed when we get to the gas station. And if it rolls over the chaos factor of 6, then nothing happens and we just reach the gas station as planned. It is an interrupt scene, so something happens on our way to the gas station. What is it that happens on our way to the gas station? We are checking on our horror event focus table. A 22 is a shiver. So something happens on our way to the gas station. A shiver is an encounter with the horror itself. I'm going to mark off 1 point of progress. Yeah, I'm going to mark off a point of progress on the horror track because 2 points of progress. Whoops. 2 points of progress because I have acquired the leverage of Casey's help. I'm putting, if I can type properly, there we go. I still have 2 peril points. So a shiver has happened, and that means that we are going to encounter the horror as our interrupt scene. What does the horror do? Let's throw our D100s twice. 82 and 96. 82 and 96 on the action table. 82 separate. 96 vulnerability. Separate vulnerability. Well, I know that it can separate the two of us. And what happens to jump to my head as I'm as Casey and Raymond are walking. Raymond doesn't have anything to defend himself with, and Casey has their gun kind of like slumped over their shoulders as they're walking. And Raymond Raymond hears something in the woods again and turns and looks, and when he turns back to look, Casey is just gone. Casey has vanished, leaving Raymond vulnerable and alone. And Raymond kind of like calls out, Casey? Casey, are you there? Casey, where'd you go? And there's no response. And so Raymond like keeps walking slowly and then stops and turns around and looks. And can Casey be found anywhere nearby? This is going to be a wits plus composure roll again of 5 dice with 9 again. Only it's supposed to be slash roll, not slash toll. That 9 explodes. 2 successes. Can Casey be found nearby? Let's ask the fate chart at 50-50, 47. Yes, Casey can be found nearby. Is Casey dead? Is Casey alive? Casey is our leverage, and we haven't rolled to lose leverage yet. So I'm going to say no. This is supposed to be a shiver, an encounter with the horror. And so Casey is in the woods nearby with his gun drawn, and he's panting. He's freaking out. And Raymond runs over to Casey and says, Casey, what is going on? I saw it. It was here. What did you see? I saw, and that's when the horror jumps out of the woods and pounces on Casey. And the horror is going to have, we'll call it 6 dice. Casey probably has a defense of 3, so that's 3 dice. That's 3 dice for attacking Casey. No successes, so the horror pounces on Casey and then immediately jumps and ducks back into the shadows of the woods. And so Raymond kind of helps Casey back up to their feet. This is also a shiver, and a shiver is worth +2 progress on the horror track. So I'm marking that down now. Anyways, so this thing has jumped Casey and attacked Casey. Does it damage Casey's gun in the process? 50-50. 100 extreme no. As a matter of fact, Casey kind of hits it with the gun and punches it in the face. It's very, I'm envisioning this thing as being like kind of humanoid, kind of hunched over, thin and gangly, and loping on all fours with a thin face and sharp features, and like a kind of like a mask of bone. And that is an encounter with the Shiver, which means that I am going to have to roll Resolve plus Composure for a breaking point with disadvantage. I'm gonna roll. I should roll for both Casey and for Raymond. Let's roll Casey's first. Let's look up the breaking points. Breaking points. I do have disadvantage on this roll. I won't forget it this time, Tice. Casey gets 4 dice, plus 1 for a total of 5 dice. Casey is an NPC and is not affected by unnatural dice. That is 2 successes. That 10 explodes into nothing. So that's 2 successes for Casey. And how many successes for Raymond? Raymond has a total of, I think, 5 willpower. 6 willpower. So I'm rolling 7 dice for Casey. That 10 explodes for a total of 2 successes because I have disadvantage from Tice. 2 successes. What happens on a success? The character has come through the breaking point intact. He might feel guilty or upset about what happened, but he can cope. Choose one of the following conditions or create a new one with storyteller. Guilty, shaken, or spooked. Let's talk about conditions. Conditions are things that you can wear. They're like statuses in Arc World. They have special rules. And I'm going to take spooked because spooked is the most... your character has seen something supernatural, not overt enough to terrify her, but unmistakably otherworldly. How your character responds to this is up to you, but it captivates her and eats her attention. You can shed this condition when your character's fear and fascination cause her to do something that hinders the group or complicates things. She goes off alone to investigate a strange noise. She stays up all night researching. She runs away instead of holding her ground, etc. She sheds... so resolution is shed the condition as noted. So I'm going to go over to Raymond's character sheet and write down condition spooked. Conditions have a resolution mechanic, and when you resolve the condition, in this case by doing something stupid in horror movie logic, you gain a beat, and beats are how experience points are formed. And I'm going to give that... NPCs don't really have conditions, so this supernatural thing with like a skull face and like oily black skin kind of jumps out of the woods and attacks and then disappears back into the woods, and both of these characters are shaken and spooked, and Casey fires a shot into the woods. And a loud crack goes off as the gunshot echoes from the trees, and Casey and Raymond stop and pant and look at each other like, did you see that? Yeah, I saw that. That was... What was that? I don't know. I have no idea. They didn't forget. They didn't crack. They both managed to stay intact together. And that will conclude the second scene from the horror track. Our lists... Oh, you know what? That emotional quest should have involved pyrophobia or claustrophobia. We'll tackle the emotional quest when it seems like it's important. Right now we're doing the horror, we're learning the horror system, and so we'll use the emotional quest rules later so I can go over them with you when that happens. For now though, they've had their shiver. That's +2 on the progress track, so we have 4 out of 20 progress for the adventure. We've had a shiver. We don't have any protection. We have leverage. We have Casey's help. I still have all of my peril points. Our lists. Are there any new characters? Yes, there is characters. There is a shiver on the character list now. An encounter with the horror. We've seen the horror. Are there any threads? Fix the car. Uncover the truth of Mom's disappearance, earn the position on the track team, and discover the source of the telekinesis are the only threads that are still there. We don't have any new goals, so there are no new threads added to the system, and that means it is now time to, I'm going to say the chaos bumps up to 7, because that was, actually, no, I'm going to say the chaos goes down to 5. The characters passed all their roles. They managed to contain themselves, and while the monster jumping out was beyond their control, they weren't harmed. They remained in control of themselves. So I'm going to say the chaos bumps down to 5. And so our scene test is still the expected scene, is to go to this gas station / mechanic, and so in order to find help for their cars that won't start. And so we're going to roll 1d10 as our scene test against Chaos 5. 8 is over the chaos, so we have our expected scene, and the characters are going to reach the gas station. I'm picturing this gas station as kind of like it's parked in the middle, in the middle of friggin' nowhere, out in the woods, and it's got like that big canopy that every gas station has with the pumps. There's 2 pumps and a building in the back with the lights. Is it nighttime? I feel like it's very likely that it's nighttime. Chaos rank 5. 95, is that an extreme no? Very likely. 96 is an extreme no, so 95 is not an extreme no. It is not nighttime. And it is early morning, and the gas station is kind of like lit by the sun rising up in the east. So the sun rising in the east is casting its golden light on this gas station. Is anybody here? I'm going to call this certain there is somebody here. 17, certain, extreme, yes. So there are many people here. The gas station is busy at this time of day, which is weird. There's a camper. There's a camper pulled in, pumping gas into the 20, pumping its gas into its tank. And as we walk up with a gun, kind of slung over Casey's back, and we head into the gas station and go looking for the person behind the counter. The person behind the counter, let's talk about them. Let's find out who they are. Allison Moody is the name we're going to go with. Allison Moody is a teenager who's got this job at this gas station and just doesn't want it, and she's chewing gum. As Casey and Raymond show up, and Raymond walks up to Casey and says, "Look, my car broke down a ways down the road, and we need help. Neither Casey or I can get the engines running, and we're just not certain what's going on here. Do you guys have a mechanic that can come help?" And the girl behind the counter, Allison, kind of like looks Casey up and down for a second, like rolls her eyes. She's so annoyed she has to do work right now. And she says, "Yeah, the mechanic is in the back. Roy!" And she kind of like calls out to Roy in the background, and Roy will come out. Roy is covered in grease, overalls. He's got a wrench in one hand, and Roy says, "Yeah." And Allison says, "Got a couple of cars broken down the road. Could use a tow." And Roy will nod. He says, "All right, just let me finish what I'm doing here." Does it take Roy a while to finish what he is doing? 51, chaos rank 5, 50-50. So 51 is over the 50-50 of 50-50. No, it does not happen in a reasonable amount of time. So Casey and Raymond are kind of stuck at this gas station waiting while Roy finishes his work. But eventually Roy will finish his work, and will pile in. Everybody can pile into the tow truck, and the tow truck, which I imagine is like an old, rusted, beat up tow truck. It's not like a modern tow truck. It's got like the rounded hood on the front, and it would have been painted red, but it's kind of faded, and now it's kind of this rusty maroon color, and it's got the crane in the back. Um, and everybody could just pile in and drive back to the cars, and that will kill our third or fourth scene. I forget what it is. We were just about to do the bookkeeping phase from the last scene, as the characters pile into the rusty old tow truck. Any new characters? We have Allison, Moody, the gas station clerk, and we have Roy the mechanic. I feel like this college that I'm driving to is probably in a small town in the middle of Maine. Very Stephen King kind of thing going on. Do we have any new threads? Fix the car. No, we don't. No new threads. So our expected scene, I feel like the characters were in control there. Our characters were definitely in control. Nothing spooky happened. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. They didn't have to, like, we had to wait, so now it's like noonish, but we didn't have to overcome any problems. We didn't fail to overcome any problems. So our characters were in control, which means that our chaos factor will shift down from 5 to 4. And now we run our scene test. A 3. Our expected scene is the tow truck coming to the 2 cars that need to be towed, and playing out the events that happen there. And so our scene test, basically the way the scene test works is if it rolls underneath the chaos factor, odds is an altered scene, which means something has changed about the expected scene, and evens is an interrupt scene, which means something happens entirely before we even get to the expected scene. So this is an altered scene, and that means that we're going to roll on the scene adjustment table to find out what is altered about the scene. A 4, increase in activity. So I think what makes the most sense here, it's noon as we approach the cars. They are where we left them, but the deer carcass that was mounted on top of Casey's car has been brutally ripped to shreds. There is blood and bone and hide just splayed everywhere. The carcass has been like eaten and mangled and mauled, chowed down on by something. And as the tow truck pulls up, does the tow truck also break down without an explanation? I'm going to call this very likely on a chaos rank of 4 is a 65 or lower. A 26 is not an extreme yes, it is yes. The tow truck just kind of like sputters, and Roy the mechanic kind of like kicks the thing. Come on, work. And Raymond will kind of look over at Roy and be like, does that normally fix your vehicles? You just kick them? Aren't you a mechanic? And Roy will turn to Raymond and be like, shut up. And everybody will pile out of the car. And Raymond and Casey immediately go and down the road like 10, 15 feet to inspect this deer carcass that's been mangled. Oh, Raymond, do you have anything worth doing? Investigation. Intelligence plus investigation, I'm going to call this. There is a chance here that we can get what's called a discovery check, where we might learn something about the horror, something useful or something informative. So let's roll our intelligence plus our investigation. So that's 4 dice. This is a disadvantage from Tice. I think this is my third. No, this is my second disadvantage from Tice that I've burned through. All right, well, that means that we get 0 successes on our investigation roll. There's just nothing. The corpse is too mangled. And Raymond kind of like pokes at it, and I almost called Casey Chance. And Casey kind of like sighs. I was looking forward to eating that venison. What is going on? And Raymond just kind of shakes his head and says, I don't know. This is fucked up, man. Meanwhile, Roy is trying to tune up his tow truck. Almost called it a toy truck. Roy is an average Joe, but he's got 2 points of crafts because he is a mechanic, and that is what he does. He's got 3 points of crafts because he's a professional mechanic. So he rolls 5 dice to try and fix the tow truck. And Roy will successfully fix the tow truck while while Casey and Raymond are inspecting the deer carcass. Now that takes some time, I imagine, and I'm going to envision this this taking some time. So I feel like the cars breaking down is connected to the horror somehow. And Casey and Raymond were unable to get their cars working because they were being hunted. Now Raymond has got the tow truck working, which means that the cars breaking down is no longer in effect unless Raymond starts up the engine and says, "Ha!" and then it shuts down. Is that what happens? Does the horror prevent the tow truck from working even though it's supposed to have been fixed? Let's ask the dice. 63 on Chaos Rank 4 is a no. It does not shut down. Roy will turn the tow truck around and hook up Casey's car to the tow truck and drive it back to the gas station. Now, the next question I have for the Mythic GM emulator is everything okay at the gas station? Because if the car will start, if the truck will start, that means the horror isn't here, which means the horror might be hitting the gas station. So I want to know, is everything okay at the gas station? A 16, everything is okay at the gas station. Okay. That is not an extreme yes, it's just a yes. I'm going to assume that is also the case. So our 2 locations, everybody piles back into the truck, drags Casey's car back to the gas station, everybody piles back into the truck, and picks up Raymond's car full of stuff and drags that to the gas station, and that is where we're going to close that scene, and the Chaos rank will drift down to 3. I'm going to say it takes a while for Roy to have fixed up the tow truck. So our clock will tick from high noon to mid-afternoon, approaching evening, as we get all of our cars tucked in. Checking our threads, our list. Any new characters? No. Any new threads? No. Okay, so what happens next? I am at a loss. The cars. Roy, fix the cars. Roy has 5 dice to fix the cars. That's what happens next. So our scene test, our expected scene is Roy fixing Casey and Raymond's cars. It is Chaos Rank 3. Our scene test says that it is an altered scene. What is the scene alteration? 2. Add a character. What character do we add? Lists. So the way this works is I roll 1d4 to pick a list here. 1. All right. And I roll 1d10 to find out where on that list we are going. 6. 6, the estranged father. Okay. So I think a phone call is what makes the most sense here. So we are having an altered scene. Yes, we're having an altered scene where Raymond's dad calls him on the phone while Roy is working on their cars. So first things first, I want to know, Roy. Was Roy rolling 5d10? Yeah, Roy was rolling 5d10. That 10 explodes. So Roy gets 2 successes. That's enough to fix the cars, because the cars shouldn't have been fucked up. And while that's going on, Raymond gets a call from his dad. What does his dad say on the phone? Let's go to Mythic GM emulators and find character conversations on the elements tables and roll twice. a 76, an 84. 76, news. 84, what kind of news? Plans. So his dad calls on the phone, and the conversation is really strained, I think, because they haven't spoken in a while, and Raymond is kind of busy right now. But his dad has plans to come visit at the college campus to help Raymond settle in. This is a bit of an olive branch because his dad is really disappointed that Raymond is going to college instead of becoming a fireman like he was. His dad is a retired fireman. And so the he's in the middle of this conversation. Does something happen now that everybody is gathered here? Raymond, Roy, Casey, and Allison are all gathered in one location here, and this thing is hunting them. So I want to know, does this thing show up and strike? I'm gonna call it nearly certain that something happens here, because I feel like something like this is the point in the horror movie where something creepy starts happening here. So nearly certain on chaos rank 3 is 65 or lower. A 93 is an extreme no. Okay. So we're going to call that there's too many people here. There's too much going on. There's too much going on. The horror decides not to strike yet. And all the cars are fixed, which means that we can get back on the road. So that's going to close out that scene. And our chaos rank will shift from 3 down to 2. And that, I think, is as Raymond piles into his car, he thanks Casey, he thanks Roy, he hangs up on the phone with his dad, he thanks Allison, and he piles into his car and he takes off down the road headed to the college with all of his stuff in the back seat, with this thing hunting him that he doesn't know about, that he's just glad to get away from in the middle of these backwoods. And I think that is a good place to end our first episode of DMPC Season 2, with this thing hunting Raymond as Raymond thinks that Raymond is safe. As Raymond thinks that he is safe from this thing, and he is clearly not, because this is the world of darkness. This is Chronicles of Darkness, and nothing is ever truly safe. If you are watching on YouTube, thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, leave a comment, drop the notification bell. If you're watching on twitch.tv/evilsqueegee, where we record these episodes live every 2 p.m. EST on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, stick around. We'll be right back after these messages. Don't touch that dial.